So I came across this conversation about Christmas recently in my copy of Miscellany 3 when I was looking for something to read for a Christmas event. And I wanted to read some Dylan Thomas, and I knew the Child's Christmas in Wales. And in fact, some of this conversation appears also in that piece. But this is a very beautiful example of Dylan Thomas's writing, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a conversation between a small boy and the self. Years and years ago, when you were a boy, when there were wolves in Wales and birds the colour of red flannel petticoats whisked past the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlours, and chased with the jawbones of deacons the English and the bears. You're not so old as Mr. Bainan, number 22, who can remember when there were no motors. Years and years ago, when you were a boy. Oh, before the motor even, before the wheel, before the duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback. You're not so daft as Mrs. Griffiths up the street, who says she puts her ear under the water in the reservoir, listens to the fish talk Welsh. When you were a boy, what was Christmas like? It snowed. It snowed last year, too. I made a snowman and my brother knocked it down, and I knocked my brother down, and then we had tea. But that was not the same snow. Our snow was not only shaken in whitewashed buckets down the sky, I think it came shawling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of the arms and hands and bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of the houses like a pure and grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls and settled on the postman opening the gate like a dumb, numb thunderstorm of white, torn Christmas cards. With a postman then, too, with sparkling eyes and wind-cherried noses, on spread frozen feet they crunched up to the doors and mittened on them manfully. But all that the children could hear was a ringing of bells. You mean that the postman went rat-a-tat-tat and the doors rang? The bells that the children could hear were inside them. I hear thunder sometimes, never bells. There were church bells, too. Inside them? No, in the backed black snow-white belfries tugged by bishops and storks, and they rang their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence. Get back to the postman. They were just ordinary postmen, fond of walking and dogs and Christmas and the snow. They knocked on the doors with blue knuckles. As has got a black knocker. And then they stood on the white welcome mat in the little drifted porches and clapped their hands together and huffed and puffed, making ghosts with their breath, and jogged from foot to foot like small boys wanting to go out. And then the presents? And then the presents after the Christmas box, and the cold postman with a rose on his button nose tingled down the tea-tray slithered run of the chilly glinting hill. He went in his ice-bound boots like a man on fishmonger's slabs. He wagged his bag like a frozen camel's hump, dizzily turned the corner on one foot, and by God, he was gone. Get back to the presents. There were the useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days and mittens made for giant sloths, zebra scuffs of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-of-war down to the galoshes, blinding tam-o'-shanters like patchwork tea-cosies, and bunny-scutted busbies and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes, from aunts who always wore wool next to the skin. There were moustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why the aunties had any skin left at all, and once I had a little crocheted nosebag from an aunt now, alas, no longer whinnying with us. and pictureless books in which small boys, though warned with quotations not to, would skate on Farmer Giles' pond and did and drowned. And books that told me everything about the wasp, except why. Get on to the useless presents. On Christmas Eve I hung at the foot of my bed Bessie Bunter's black stocking, and always I said I would stay awake all the moonlit, snow-lit night to hear the roof-alighting reindeer and see the hollowed boot descend through soot. But soon the sand of the snow drifted into my eyes, and though I stared towards the fireplace and around the flickering room where the black sack-like stocking hung, I was asleep before the chimney trembled and the room was red and white with Christmas. But in the morning, though no snow melted on the bedroom floor, the stocking bulged and brimmed. Press it, it squeaked like a mouse in a box. It smelt of tangerine. A furry arm lolled over, like the arm of a kangaroo out of its mother's belly. Squeeze it hard in the middle and something squelched. Squeeze it again, squelch again. Look out of the frost-scribbled window on the great loneliness of the small hill. A blackbird was silent in the snow. Were there any sweets? Of course there were sweets. It was the marshmallows that squelched. Hard-boiled, toffee, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknel, humbugs, glaciers and marzipan and butter Welsh for the Welsh. And troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they would not fight, could always run, and snakes and families and happy ladders and easy hobby games for little engineers, complete with instructions, easy for Leonardo, and a whistle to make the dogs bark, to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall with his stick, to shake our picture off the wall, and a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth and you stood at the corner of the street and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette, and then, with a smirk, you ate it. And last of all, in the toe of the stocking, sixpence like a silver corn, and then downstairs for breakfast under the balloons. Were there uncles like in our house? There are always uncles at Christmas, the same uncles, and on Christmas mornings with dog-disturbing whistle and sugar fags, I would scour the swathed town for the news of the little world, and find always a dead bird by the white bank or by the deserted swings, perhaps a robin, all but one of his fires out, and that fire still burning on his breast. Men and women wading and scooping back from church or chapel, with taproom noses and wind-smacked cheeks, all albinos, huddled their stiff, black, jarring feathers against the irreligious snow. Mistletoe hung from the gas in all the front parlours. There were sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert spoons. And cats in their fur-abouts watched the fires, and the high-heat fires crackled and spat, all ready for the chestnuts and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlours without their collars, uncles almost certainly, trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again as though waiting for the explosion. And some few small aunts, not wanted in the kitchen, or anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edges of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break like faded cups and saucers. Not many those mornings trod the piling streets. An old man always, fawn-bowlered, yellow-gloved, and at this time of year, with spats of snow, would take his constitutional to the white bowling green and back, and he would take it wet or fine, on Christmas Day or Doomsday. Sometimes two hale young men with big pipes blazing, no overcoats and wind-blown scarves, would trudge unspeaking down to the forlorn sea, to work up an appetite, to blow away the fumes, who knows, to walk into the waves until nothing of them was left but two curling smoke clouds of their inextinguishable briars. Why didn't you go home for Christmas dinner? Oh, but I did. I always did. I would be slapdashing home, the gravy smell of the dinners of others, the bird smell, the brandy, the puddings and mints weaving up my nostrils, when out of a snow-clogged side lane would come a boy, the spit of myself, with a pink-tipped cigarette and the violet past of a black eye, cocky as a bullfinch, leering all to himself. I hated him on sight and sound, and I would be about to put my dog whistle to my lips and blow him off the face of Christmas when suddenly he, with a violet wink, put his whistle to his lips and blew so stridently, so high, so exquisitely loud, that gobbling faces, their cheeks bulged with goose, would press against their tinselled windows the whole length of the white, echoing street. What did you have for dinner? Turkey and blazing pudding. Was it nice? It was not made on earth. What did you do after dinner? The uncles sat in front of the fire, took off their collars, loosened all buttons, put their large, moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and slept. Mothers, aunts, and sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. The dog was sick. Auntie Bessie had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snow-bound backyard singing like a big-bosomed thrush. I would blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up to, and when they burst, which they all did, the uncles jumped and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins and the snow descending, I would sit in the front room among festoons and Chinese lanterns and nibble at dates and try to make a model man-of-war following the instructions for little engineers and produce what might be mistaken for a sea-going tram-car. And then at Christmas tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly over their mince pies, and the great iced cake loomed in the centre of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced her tea with rum, because it was only once a year, and in the evening there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Cherry Ripe, and another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had got on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about rejected love and bleeding hearts and death, and then another in which she said that her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again, and then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlit and the flying, unending, smoke-coloured snow, I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill and hear the music rising from them up the long, steadily falling night. I turned the gas down, I got into bed, I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept. But it all sounds just like an ordinary Christmas. It was. But Christmas when you were a boy wasn't any different to Christmas now. It was. Why was Christmas different then? I mustn't tell you. Why mustn't you tell me? Why is Christmas different for me? I mustn't tell you. Why can't Christmas be the same for me as it was for you when you were a boy? I mustn't tell you. I mustn't tell you because it is Christmas now.